Ladies and gentlemen, please, a rousing applause for Mr. Tan Ji Singh.
Friends and fellow Singaporeans, good evening. Thank you very much for coming out to hear me and my guest speakers. Tonight is the one night I am permitted to hold this mass rally to talk to you in person. I shall use this opportunity to explain to you why I seek this office of the President and what I intend to achieve on your behalf. Tonight, I will walk with you through the history of our past presidents. We must know where we came from, and only then will we know where we are heading. Our first president was Encik Yusof bin Ishak. He was a good president who fought for the independence of Singapore. He was a ceremonial president, a man of the people, and a freedom fighter. When he died, he was given a state funeral and buried at Kranji State Cemetery. Our second president was Dr. Benjamin Sheares, a much respected ceremonial president and an eminent doctor. The Sheares Bridge is named for him. He was a very popular president and cared deeply for the people, but unfortunately, he died rather early. Our third president was Mr. Devan Nair, another freedom fighter who was jailed by the colonial government and set free in 1959 when the PAP took power. He worked hard for the people and launched the NTUC. As a trade unionist, he was a street fighter, and when he was elevated to the presidency, he continued to speak up for various causes. And this was where he overstepped his ceremonial role. He was then labeled an alcoholic and removed from office. Mr. Wee Kim Wee succeeded Mr. Devan Nair. As a journalist and diplomat with no political base, he nevertheless succeeded in becoming the people's president. Our first elected president was Mr. Ong Teng Cheong, former DPM, who took the custodial role of the presidency very seriously. He asked for information on the reserves, but was turned down and told it took too many years for the information to be churned out. Why did they not just use more men to process the information? That was his first falling out with the PAP government that he worked for so many years. When he died of cancer, he was not accorded a state funeral. President Naden became our president for 12 years. He was the only candidate in both presidential elections and walked in with our contest due to the decision of the Presidential Elections Committee. As an ex-civil servant without a political base, he fulfilled the role of a ceremonial president, but lightly exercised his custodial powers vis-a-vis the reserves and key appointments in specified state organizations. We cannot overly fault him because the way that the elected presidency is structured required him to take counsel from the appointed wise men in the Presidential Council on the one hand and the government on the other. If he disagrees with their advice, his veto will have to go to the government, and the latter can overturn his veto by a 2/3 vote in Parliament. In the past, the President was appointed by the Prime Minister, but 20 years ago, the Constitution was amended to enable the people to elect the President directly. This was a fundamental change. The purpose of direct election is to give moral authority to the President to perform his duty of providing checks and balances on the government. 5 key areas are specified in the Constitution: national reserves, key appointments, detentions under the Internal Security Act, investigations by the Corrupt Practices Investigation Bureau, and restraining orders in connection with the maintenance of religious harmony. The President has the power of veto over the government in these 5 areas. All 5 areas are important, but I will focus for my discussion on the first 2 to show how they affect the day-to-day life of Singaporeans. The President should and will exercise his veto power if he believes that the government is trying to raid the reserves and spend them extravagantly on unnecessary projects. This is your money, and if the government requires it, I, as President, will make sure that it is well spent on meaningful projects that benefit Singaporeans directly, such as schools and hospitals. On key appointments, I will scrutinize the background and track record of all government appointees who come before me for confirmation. I will ensure that only true talented Singaporeans are appointed, who are motivated by a sense of public service and not by huge financial rewards. Reappointments will also be subject to the same scrutiny. Only such a system of intense scrutiny will ensure the integrity and independence of key institutions such as the civil service, the judiciary, and investment agencies. Singaporeans deserve this, as their daily lives and savings are at stake. For too long, you have been accustomed to the idea that the President has a limited ceremonial and diplomatic role. But then why the need for an elected presidency with such a generous salary? I believe a president acting with courage has real powers under our Constitution. In seeking the presidency, I am not motivated by personal ambition or monetary gain. As an ex-civil servant, I have always been driven by public service. Rather than receiving over $25 million for 6 years, I intend to return the bulk of the President's pay to the people if I am elected.